Anthropic just shipped 10 ready-to-run AI agents built specifically for Wall Street. We're talking about systems designed to draft pitchbooks, build out financial models, screen KYC files, and literally run chunks of the month-end close. Welcome to this explainer covering Anthropic's new AI templates targeting the financial services sector. This is honestly a massive line in the sand. It's the exact moment we see AI in finance shifting from a cool experimental demo to deployable, highly governed software. So I'm going to walk you through the hard facts of this release, straight from the source.
But real quick before we dive into the weeds, just a standard reminder. The information we're covering today is purely for education and analysis. It doesn't constitute financial advice. We're strictly looking at the tech, the workflow shifts, and the governance frameworks.
All right, our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the overarching finance AI shift. Second, exactly what Anthropic shipped. Third, why this is about concrete outputs, not just chats. Fourth, a much-needed compliance reality check. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Monday morning operator playbook.
So, Section 1, the Finance AI Shift. On May 5, 2026, Anthropic announced a very specific, targeted bet on the enterprise market, and it signals a fundamental shift in thinking. Basically, the fastest way to scale AI inside a massive bank or asset manager isn't by teaching thousands of employees to write better prompts. No, it's by shipping the job itself as a fully baked template. Enterprise adoption is finally moving past the which foundational model is smarter phase right into which vendor can actually ship a governed workflow.
To pull this off, Anthropic released ready-to-run agents that target the absolute most time-consuming grunt work in finance. Look, if you have ever watched a junior analyst painstakingly copy-paste numbers across Excel at 1 in the morning, well, that exact job is now a template. They are specifically going after pitchbook generation, updating complex financial models, screening massive Know Your Customer files, and executing that incredibly tedious month-end close. They're targeting the exact repetitive tasks that just burn hours and dictate deal speed.
Moving right along to Section 2, what Anthropic actually shipped.
Now you have to notice the core distinction they're making here. Anthropic makes it crystal clear that these are not just generic chatbots. You aren't just opening a browser tab and chatting with Claude. Instead, these are deployable templates positioned to run as plugins in Claude Cowork or as cookbooks for Claude-managed agents. Think of them as pre-configured architectures designed to do a highly specific job safely within a locked-down enterprise environment.
The announcement breaks down each of these templates into a package of 3 critical building blocks. First, you've got skills, which means specific instructions combined with deep domain knowledge for a particular finance task. Second are connectors, and honestly, this is the massive part. Connectors provide governed, real-time access to the internal data the task actually needs to run, whether that's live market data, SEC filings, or internal CRM records. And third, subagents. These are specialized secondary AI models that get called up to handle very specific subtasks, like picking comparables or double-checking evaluation methodology. So it's a structured assembly line, not just one giant brain trying to multitask.
They shipped 10 exact agents, basically split right down the middle into 2 main categories. On the client coverage and research side, you have tools like the Pitch Builder, the Earnings Reviewer, and the Model Builder. Then, on the high-volume operations side, you've got the General Ledger Reconciler, the Month-End Closer, and the KYC Screener. The pattern here is super clear. These are highly repeatable workflows where speed is absolutely critical, but where making an error carries massive downstream risk. And that is exactly where a templated, governed agent actually wins.
All right, Section 3, outputs, not just chats.
The real value proposition here is the structured process itself. It takes strictly defined inputs, think SEC 10Q filings, public earnings transcripts, or your CRM notes. It runs them through defined agent steps using those skills and subagents we just talked about, and it spits out tangible, verifiable business outputs. It's not magic, it's just a highly defined throughput engine.
And critically, those outputs are delivered in the exact formats finance professionals already live in every single day. The agent hands you back drafted comparables in an Excel spreadsheet, a structured pitch book in PowerPoint, and a drafted cover note right in Outlook. The whole thing is prepped and ready for human review. The agent isn't the final decider here. It just aggressively accelerates the generation of the artifact so the human expert actually spends their time reviewing and approving rather than copy-pasting.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Compliance Reality Check. Look, we need to step back from the productivity hype for a second. So I'm going to hand it over to our risk desk for a skeptical analyst perspective on what it actually takes to deploy this software in the real world.
Thanks. All right, putting on the skeptical analyst hat here, we have to ask the hard question. When you try to deploy these agents across a massive asset manager or a global investment bank, what breaks first? Is it the data licensing, the hidden model errors, or the approval workflows? Because the golden rule in finance is simple. If you can't govern it, you absolutely cannot use it.
Right out of the gate, compliance teams are flagging 3 immediate failure modes. First up, data licensing. If your connectors start pulling from unlicensed data or freely scraping the web, your shiny new agent is suddenly a massive legal liability. Second, quiet model errors. Finance work is notorious for spreadsheet mistakes that look highly plausible at first glance. If you don't force mandatory verification steps and strict source citations, confident nonsense is going to slip right by you. And third, audit trails. If a regulator knocks on your door and asks exactly why a specific number was generated, and you can't trace exactly who approved it, what source it used, and what tool calls were made, well, you are in serious trouble.
So the conclusion from a risk perspective is pretty stark. If you roll this out without clear, ironclad data entitlements and a flawless audit trail, these templates aren't going to be some massive enterprise moat. They will just become unmanaged agent sprawl. They'll act fast, they'll act confident, and they will be entirely unauditable, making them an active liability.
Section 5, the operator playbook. Thanks to the risk desk for that reality check. Now, to make sure you avoid those catastrophic risks, let's lay out a highly actionable playbook for Monday morning.
The single smartest operational move you can make right now is to resist the temptation of a massive firm-wide rollout. Do not start with, "We need agents everywhere." Start with one narrow, highly defined workflow. Pick something like an earnings review process or a specific KYC screening protocol and test it end to end. You absolutely have to prove that your governance works on a micro scale before you even try to scale the productivity.
And within that initial pilot, you must enforce 4 incredibly strict governance rules from day one. 1. Restrict all access to named data sources only. Absolutely no free-form web scraping. 2. Enforce least privilege permissions. The agent gets access to the exact data needed for that specific task and nothing else. 3. Require strict human approval gates before anything ships, internally or externally. And 4. Maintain a totally readable audit log in your console of every single tool call, source, and output. Look, if you can't hit those 4 marks, you aren't ready for agents. You're just ready for an incident.
Anthropic is proving a huge point here. Finance agents won't win just because they're smarter. They'll win because they are more governable. If a bank can master the deeply messy world of data entitlements and compliance reviews using these templates, that's a massive competitive moat. So, my final question to leave you with today. If you were a COO or a CISO at a major bank right now, looking at these 10 agents, would you greenlight a pilot this quarter, or would you pause everything until you have a fully proven, bulletproof audit and permission model built out in-house? Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and we'll see you next time.